back to another TerranScapes video. Today, or for this video, I always start with today. For this video, it's water everywhere. This is going to be a follow-up on the some decision making on the water effects and some more things that I've learned. A brand new product that was shipped to me by a potential customer who wanted me to do a little demo with it, test it out, see what I thought about it. A couple custom pieces that I've done that have some water effects on them, and a little demonstration of how I plan on shipping water pieces in the future. So, in case you hear some scurrying underfoot, oh, come here. Now, we just got two kitties. Say hi to everybody. Hi, YouTube viewers. Anyway, so if the camera gets knocked or you hear scuttling underfoot, that's them. So, let's take a closer look. This is going to be maybe a little bit longer video, but I'm going to try to keep it brief on each of the topics that I talk about. So let's get started. Let's start with the new product. This product is called Water Gloss. I haven't tried this product before, but it's produced by Scenic Express. Scenic Express produces a lot of materials for railroad hobby diorama enthusiasts. And if you haven't visited the Scenic Express site, I highly recommend that you do so. They've got a lot of materials there. The prices are pretty competitive, and it's a nice diversity, adding to the materials that you can get from Woodland Scenics, for instance. The consistency of this is very thin. It's just under PVA glue, so it's kind of got a really thin consistency. And we'll see if I can show you here on this board. Here's the water gloss. This is previously, if you haven't seen the previous video, I've tested out Mod Podge, Hard Mod Podge, Liquitex Gel, and the Woodland Scenics Water Effects material. Now, they also make another material that I haven't tested out called Realistic Water, but I've seen it in use, and so I haven't purchased Woodland Scenics Water, Realistic Water, because it actually is a self-leveling compound, and what we're really looking for is texture. So I tried the water gloss right here next to the Mod Podge, and you can see that because it's a much thinner consistency, it doesn't hold ripples quite as high as the Mod Podge does. It is, I would say, a notch or two below the glossy effect that you get with the Mod Podge, somewhere in between, really, the hard coat Mod Podge and the regular Mod Podge, somewhere in between there. But one of the things that was interesting about it when I took a look at it, and I think this color is going to come through, is it says that it can be tinted. Now, one of the problems with tinting something like Mod Podge is when you stir it, you're going to get a tremendous amount of bubbles in it. So I've been very reluctant to actually try to tint this at all, as just applying it without getting bubbles on the surface is, you know, borderline nightmare. It's really tough sometimes. But because this material is so thin, it degasses itself relatively easily, and so I dropped in a couple, just a touch actually, I don't even want to say a drop, I touched the bottom of the cup with a dropper that had some blue ink in it, and I just wanted to see how that picked it up. And you can see in the thicker areas that it did come through with some of the blue tint, and so that provides at least one other way of adding a glossy coating to your surface and being able to add color into that glossy coat so you can build a different kind of a level or a layer effect. Another thing that I wanted to showcase here with this is watching these over time. Something has been very interesting that's been happening. Let's see if I pan up so you can see through them. There we go. That's not too bad. Over time in the basement here, now I live in New England, it's been incredibly humid. July we've had rain, and humidity levels are through the roof. And you can see here in the Mod Podge that it's begun to re-cloud. I've had this crystal clear at one point, and it's actually starting to reabsorb moisture. Now, I got kind of distressed about that since, you know, that's going to mean that pieces that I send out might be getting cloudy again. But then I noticed, so do all the other products. The hard coat, the Mod Podge hard coat, and most interesting, the Liquitex Gel. Now you can really see how that's reabsorbed some moisture from the air. And, just as important, so has the Woodland Scenics Water Effects. This has reabsorbed a lot of moisture from the air. So it seems to be something inherent in the properties of these materials, and it's not something that seems to be easily avoided, although I'll show you a couple pieces that I've done in just a second to try to combat that and how effective that has been. So maybe we should talk about those. So here you see an assortment of water effect pieces that I've done, some river pieces and a pond. And this pond I finished, oh gosh, probably a week to a week and a half ago. Cured the Mod Podge till it was completely crystal clear, then coated it with a layer of varnish to seal it in. This has been retarding the ability of the Mod Podge to reabsorb moisture from the air, but has not completely prevented it. See if I can pick it up in the camera. There are a few spots. Okay, this might show. Now, I'm being super picky here. This is very, very mild, and it's taken a full week of just sitting on the shelf to have this happen at all. But what I think we can expect, we being the modeling community or whatever we want to call ourselves, is that when using these products, if you're in a very high humid climate, you're going to see some general clouding of some of the areas where these kinds of materials, any of these kinds of acrylic glosses that I just showed you, they're going to pick up some moisture and they're going to get a little cloudy over time. I fully expect that this is going to disappear over time once the humidity drops and it has time to sort of let that moisture come back out into the air. This piece also was dried perfectly clear, but it's a much thicker coating of Mod Podge. The ripples are much heavier on it. This is a double coat of Mod Podge, and this pond got a single coat. And I like the double coat ripple effects, but it does produce a slightly deeper amount of Mod Podge, which then can absorb, and I think you can see it a little bit in here. Some of these areas are picking up a little clouding right now as they've been sitting on the shelf waiting to get shipped. I don't think this is going to be avoidable at this point, as this has been coated with varnish, and I think again we're going to see some fluctuations in the kind of clarity that we're going to see in these materials over different seasons depending on when you take them out and put them on the table. I was taking a look at this and deciding whether this is going to be appropriate or not, and I figure it kind of adds a little variation to the surface, and I don't think it's completely unattractive. So I think I'm going to continue to move forward with these pieces for right now, but as a potential customer, if it's something that you're concerned about, I want to make you fully aware of what kinds of things are happening with the materials and what you can expect when you open up the box. The customer that ordered these river pieces wanted me to do the thin sections. He bought a series of wide sections and then also some transitions, and he wanted where the pieces got narrow to look like they were flowing a little bit more rapidly. So what I've done here is I've given it a much stiffer, more peaked appearance, and then dry brushed it a little bit to try to pick out some of those peaks and give it a little bit more of a whitewash look. It's pretty subtle. I could put in, you know, some real heavy undulations, but again, we're going to be dealing with issues of cloudiness if we build up the layers too thick, and we're also dealing with issues of time and cost investment in that. And I think this is a very nice compromise where you get a nice contrast with the slow-moving wide sections and a little bit of a rougher look, faster flowing in the thin sections. The last thing I wanted to showcase were a couple of custom water pieces that a customer had sent me to be finished. I'm going to see if I can find the photos of these unfinished and include them in this video so you can see what they look like. These are resin cast pieces, and he had purchased Dwarven Forge terrain. Oh, hold on. Dust that off a little bit. He had purchased a set of the Dwarven Forge cavern water set. I'm not sure the exact name of it. These are cast in polystone. Hey, quick question. Anybody out there knows what polystone is? Let me know. I've tried to search online to see about this material, as seems to be a plastic resin, plaster resin hybrid. It's very, very durable, and then they've coated it with some kind of epoxy resin, which also is very durable and is quite scratch resistant. And hear that? It's got a nice ceramic feel. Very, very tough material. I was impressed with it right away when I got it. They do a little felt. This is not a plug for Dwarven Forge, but I just want to say that I was pretty impressed. They do a felt bottom on all their pieces here, apparently, and then they've done some very interesting coloring work to try to give an illusion of depth to this piece that I think is actually fairly effective. The only problem, of course, with these kinds of materials when you're pouring epoxy resins is that you can only get a glass-like surface, and you can't get any real water movement. So There's pros and cons with any kind of material that people use, and I'd still be curious to know what it is they use on their top coat as well. I asked them, and of course they didn't respond. So anyway, this is what the piece was originally, and he wanted the waterfall to match this look. So what I did is I tried to pick out some of those light greenish yellows that are in the stonework of the Dwarven Forge piece and carry them through onto the stonework of this piece. And I think that is a pretty decent match, and it's certainly more plausible when you consider that these are not the exact same stone, but it's a very nice match, and I think it's going to look really well placed in accompaniment with these kinds of pieces. Let me see if I can zoom in on these and you can see them a little bit closer. So this piece features a waterfall. It comes in a two-part resin cast, which has to be joined at the base here. And the waterfall has an opening at the top here where the water's cascading out, flows over a rock or two, has a little bump here, and then flows into this small pool at the bottom. One of the things that's interesting, noteworthy about this piece is that the waterfall itself is textured, and that the water is actually cast in resin, and then you are, to paint it and gloss it in whatever way you want. So I'm restricted when I finish this piece to match the actual contours of that resin rather than create my own ripples and falls as they would be if I were to design it myself. So what I've done is tried to accentuate those with some water effect materials and then give them a little bit of some paint, a little bit of some a little sparkle, a little glisten, if you will, to catch some of that, and then carried it down into the bottom. Here too it was textured, so underneath here is a little dry brush work to pick out some of the textures that were originally molded into it, and then I've filled it and then textured the surface to give it a light ripple. The second piece is the tiny fountain. This tiny fountain is a pretty interesting little piece. I think it's really nice. As I said, it's a single piece resin cast with a pewter head that you attach. And then I've done a little fountain coming out of it, similar to the fountain work I've done in the past. And then I've got that fountain, see if I can keep that in focus, there we go. I've got that fountain splashing towards the front, and I've tried to froth that up a little bit to catch some of the motion of that water, and added a little bit of green tint to the water, both coming out of the dragon's mouth and into the water there, to kind of give that effect that, this is a pretty putrid area of the dungeon here, that none of the water is safe to drink, and followed through with the greenish tint in all of the water to match the overall greenish tint that you see in the Dwarven Forge pieces. I think they came out pretty well. I like them. So, it's a lot of water effects to talk about today, and try to keep it under the 15-minute mark here, but I just wanted to let you know about some of the things that I've learned, to share with you a new product as well. I think if you're looking for a water coating product that's relatively inexpensive and is going to give you decent performance, I think the water gloss from Scenic Express is not a bad way to go. I would check it out, and know that any kind of acrylic material you use is going to share some of the similar properties in terms of their overall hardness. They can all be dented by a fingernail, for instance. They're going to have their overall issues with potential humidity, which I think is going to fluctuate as the season progresses and depending on the part of the country in which you live. And different materials are going to give you different amounts of texture, so you're going to have to pick one that works for you the best, or depending on the actual terrain that you want to model. Of course, if you have any questions about anything that I've discussed, you can always put a comment down below in the video. Be happy to answer those. I always check those every time somebody posts one, and I try to answer most of them when they come up. And I didn't show you how I'm going to ship the river pieces, but I think I'm running a little long, so I'll include that in another video on its own, and we could talk about that in a little more detail, some of the problems and benefits of doing the system I think I'm going to pursue. So, hope you enjoyed this, and keep an eye out for more videos. There'll be more coming soon, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Best place to start really is talking about a new product here, and I've added it to the board that I had tested some of the other water products against, so it gives me a really nice side-by-side comparison. The product is Water Gloss. This is produced by Woodland Scenics. Now Woodland Scenics, this is a little blurred down here, but Woodland Scenics is a company that produces a lot of railroad model terrain accessories or materials. If you haven't checked out Woodland's, whoops. Did I just call them Woodland Scenics? Let's scratch that.